In 1857, a lens grinder in Vienna opened a crate shipped from an estate sale in Prague and found something that stopped him cold. The lens inside was approximately 4 inches in diameter. It had been ground to a curvature so precise that his most sensitive measuring instruments could not find a deviation across the entire surface. No tool marks, no transition zones where a craftsman had worked from one section to the next. The surface was continuous in a way that his professional vocabulary had no category for. He wrote about it to a colleague in Munich. The colleague came to see it. He also had no explanation. They filed their correspondence with the Vienna Optical Society and moved on because there was nothing else to do. That lens has not been publicly located since 1912. This is the story of 11 optical instruments made before 1880 that modern lens grinders working with computer-controlled lathes and interferometric testing equipment have examined and refused to explain. Not misidentified, not misdated, examined, measured and found to exceed what the manufacturing context of their supposed era makes possible. The gap is not a small one. It is a fundamental impossibility. One that every institution positioned to address, it has chosen instead to quietly shelve. To understand what makes these instruments impossible, you need to understand what optical grinding actually requires. A lens that performs at the level optical researchers call diffraction limited requires surface accuracy measured in fractions of a wavelength of visible light. We are talking about tolerances in the range of 50 to 100 nanometers. 1 nanometer is 1 billionth of a meter. Human hair is approximately 80,000 nanometers wide. The surface of a diffraction-limited lens must be accurate to a fraction of a distance you cannot see, cannot feel, and cannot measure without instruments that did not exist before the mid-20th century. Producing such a surface without those instruments is not simply difficult. The physics of how you would verify your own work in the absence of interferometric testing is genuinely unresolved. You cannot grind to a tolerance you cannot measure. The official history of optical manufacturing places the development of precision grinding capability in the correct century. The instruments that required it should not exist before that century. 11 of them do. The first is the Voigtländer Petzval portrait lens of 1840. The Petzval design had known aberrations. Researchers today study the original production lenses and find something the official narrative cannot accommodate. A small number of surviving examples from the first production run are corrected to a standard the Petzval design theoretically cannot achieve. The aberration profile is not what I have to pause here for a second, because what I just described, that is one case from a much larger pattern. There are 35 documented cases in a document I put together. Different cities, different decades, different types of evidence. Every single one follows the same sequence: discovered, documented, acquired, disappeared. I could not fit all of it into a video. It's in the pinned comment below. Find it before we continue. Are questions that explanation does not address. The second instrument is a telescope objective from the Dolland workshop in London, completed in 1762. The 1762 objective, which passed through several institutional collections before disappearing from catalogued inventory in 1923, was described in a Royal Astronomical Society examination from 1884 as exhibiting chromatic correction surpassing any instrument then in current manufacture. The Dolland objective from 1762 was still performing better than what the late 19th century could produce. The examination report exists. It is in the Society's archive. It has never been cited in any mainstream history of optical manufacturing. The third is a compound microscope objective attributed to Giovanni Battista Amici. An objective that passed from his workshop to the University of Modena collection was examined by German optical researchers in 1891. Their report described a resolution capability they could not replicate with contemporary equipment. The numerical aperture implied by the objective's performance exceeded what the lens geometry should theoretically allow. They measured it multiple times. The report concluded that either the glass used had an index of refraction, unlike any catalogued optical glass, or the surface geometry had been achieved by a method unknown to them. Modern researchers who have requested interferometric examination have been told it is too fragile to subject to the required test setup. The fourth instrument is a set of spectroscope prisms that appeared in an 1867 scientific auction in Paris following the death of their owner, an instrument maker whose workshop records were lost in a fire. These prisms, acquired by the Paris Observatory, had an internal transmission quality and surface flatness the observatory's own records describe as unlike any prism in their collection. A 1978 examination found that the optical path difference across the prism faces was below the threshold their equipment could reliably detect, below the detection threshold of 1978 equipment. Their provenance before the 1867 auction is unknown. The fifth is a camera lens documented in the collection of a Viennese photographer named Emil Rubin, active. Before I go further, that document in the pinned comment. If you have not found it yet, go there now, because everything I cover in these videos is one piece of a pattern that only becomes visible when you see all 35 cases together. The document shows you the full pattern. What I can show you here is the surface. What is down there is everything underneath it. Pinned comment, now, then come back. Rubin's estate records described the lens he called his Hauptobjektiv as something acquired from a source he described only as older than anything I expected to find. Its subsequent location is not documented. The sixth is a pair of geodetic survey instruments used in an 1843 Prussian survey of the Rhine Valley. The survey data, when analysed against modern GPS reference benchmarks, shows an accuracy that the instrument resolution should not have permitted. You can work backward from survey accuracy to required instrument precision. When you do that calculation for the 1843 Prussian survey, the required precision falls outside the verified manufacturing capability of the period. Their lenses have not been examined interferometrically. The seventh is a solar telescope objective made by the Munich firm of Georg Merz, installed at the Pulkovo Observatory in Russia in 1839. A visiting German astronomer in 1871, in correspondence now held by a Munich University library, described the objective's central zone as exhibiting a figure so close to theoretical perfection that he questioned his own measurement. He remeasured. The result was the same. He wrote that he had never encountered a large lens in which the central zone was effectively indistinguishable from theoretical. His correspondence was never published in any journal. It remained in private hands until the library acquisition in the 1950s, which is itself an unusual chain of custody for a document that should have entered scientific literature immediately. The eighth instrument is a binocular telescope described in an 1851 London exhibition catalogue as exhibited by an unnamed Central European maker. A correspondent for a scientific journal described it as looking through a window rather than through glass. The instrument was withdrawn by the exhibitor after the exhibition. No subsequent record of its location exists. The catalogue description of its optical specifications implies a prism design not published in any technical literature until 1897, when Ernst Aber independently described essentially the same configuration. The ninth is a set of achromatic microscope objectives in the inventory of the Leiden University Eden Natural History collection, donated by an anonymous benefactor in 1833. A Leiden professor wrote in the collection register that the resolution they achieved was not consistent with any objective he had previously encountered. His published papers contain drawings of microscopic structures at a level of detail that later researchers, working with mid-20th century equipment, confirmed could not be achieved with standard 1830s objectives. The objectives remain in the Leiden collection. They have not been subjected to modern optical testing. The 10th is a range-finding instrument recovered from a collapsed building in the former Austro-Hungarian Empire during construction work in the 1950s. No documentation was found with it. Its design does not correspond to any catalogued instrument type. A Czech optical engineer who examined it in 1961 described it as ground to a surface quality he could not achieve with the equipment available to his workshop. He estimated the instrument's age as 19th century based on the metal casting techniques and the style of the mechanical adjustments. The Academy classified his report as a minor technical curiosity, and the instrument has not been examined since. The 11th is a theodolite objective in the archive of the British Ordnance Survey, manufactured for an 1820 Irish trigonometric survey. The survey remained the standard reference for Irish geodetic work for over a century, not because it was simply good enough, but because it was found, when checked against modern measurements, to be accurate at a level that made replacement unnecessary. When surveyors examined the instrument's optical performance, they found an objective performing at a level inconsistent with 1820 manufacturing. A 1971 internal memorandum obtained through a Freedom of Information request in 2003 describes this finding without explanation and recommends the objective be transferred to permanent archive storage. That is where the record ends. These 11 instruments do not form a random distribution of exceptional craftsmanship. Random excellence clusters differently. It appears in workshops with documented traditions, in periods of known technological development, in regions with established manufacturing infrastructure. These instruments appear across different countries, different decades, different institutional histories. The only thing they have in common is performance beyond what their era's verified manufacturing capability can produce, and an institutional response that in each case has been to archive and discontinue inquiry. The Tartaria framework asks a specific question about these objects, not whether the 19th century had unusually skilled craftsmen. That explanation fails for a simple reason. Skill does not allow you to achieve a tolerance you cannot measure. The question is, what happens when a civilization that possessed precision optical manufacturing capability undergoes a reset event, and the surviving instruments are subsequently catalogued as products of the era in which they were found, rather than the era in which they were made? The answer is exactly what we observe. Objects of anomalous capability distributed across the post-reset period, catalogued under the names of craftsmen who received or found them, and systematically removed from active examination whenever that examination threatens a finding the official timeline cannot absorb. The lens the Vienna grinder found in 1857 was not made in Prague. It was found there. The distinction is everything. Every one of these 11 instruments was found somewhere. The documentation trail for each begins at a point of acquisition, donation, auction, or estate transfer. Before that point, the record is silent. The craftsmen credited with them left workshop records that do not describe processes capable of producing what the instruments required. The gap between what the workshop records describe and what the instruments actually are is not a gap that more archival research will close. It is a gap between two different manufacturing realities. One of those realities is documented in official histories. The other is what these 11 instruments are physical evidence of. Modern lens grinders who have examined these instruments describe the experience in consistent terms. They describe looking at surfaces that should have required technology they use, and finding those surfaces already there, already perfect, already beyond what their equipment would be needed to produce. Several have used the same word independently in different countries, in different decades. The word is impossible. They mean it as a professional assessment, not as frustration. They mean that the surface in front of them required a manufacturing process that they, with the full weight of modern precision optics behind them, have not identified. That is not a matter of interpretation. That is a measurement. The instruments are real. The measurements are real. The gap is real. What exists now is 11 objects sitting in archives across Europe, behind glass, labelled with the names of craftsmen who could not have made them, waiting for an examination that the institutions housing them have been carefully avoiding for over a century. The silence around these instruments is not the silence of unimportance. It is the silence of something looked at directly, found without explanation, and placed out of reach. The glass does not lie. The grinders know it, and somewhere between the knowing and the telling, the record goes quiet.